Now, my next guest is a 9-time Irish champion flat jockey who in a stellar career amassed 11 classic victories between Britain and Ireland. The most recent of those 3 years ago when Harzan completed the English and Irish Derby double. That doesn't tell the full story of his life. The last 15 months have taken some getting used to, and some will be covering all that and more with the great Pat Smullen.
Refused to bend from Tutsil. Zafin with a rally as well. Refused to bend from North Star. Plateau refused to bend, won the Guineas.
Right of passage, Adrian Aquarius on the far side. Neck and neck as they race up towards the line. Right of passage and Pat Smullen lands the Gold Cup. Beats Adrian Aquarius.
Covered Love is in the lead for Pat Smullen. Kirby and Jack Naylor trying to bear down, but it's Covered Love for Hugo Palmer who's going to win the Derby Irish Oaks for Pat Smullen.
Free Eagle showing in front. The Grey Gatsby is trying to get to him and he's making progress. Free Eagle shows in front. The Grey Gatsby is closing with every single stride. Free Eagle just I think to the Grey Gatsby.
And running up towards the finish, fascinating rock. Revenges the defeat last time were bound in success days.
The Tarzan is pulling out more, and it's Tarzan in the colours of the Arca card who has won the Investec Derby for Pat Smullen and Dermot Wells.
And here he is alongside me, Pat Smullen. We were looking back at those. I just said to you, I backed the Grey Gatsby that day, Pat. How could you do that? And he got a troubled passage, but you just said to me that was your best ride ever, you think?
Probably one of my better days, yeah. They were going no pace that day and we were sitting back a little bit and moved up into a good position and just it was the right place at the right time.
How does it feel now, you looking back at those wins, those memories? Because we speak to ex-jockeys who have been forced sometimes to quit, not necessarily on their own terms and in their own time. And actually, I think some find it harder to almost watch back those memories because you feel that there's still a sense of what might have been. How's it for you watching them back?
Yeah, no, I take pleasure in watching them back, to be honest with you. I suppose what's after happening to me, if it was injury or or you just went out of favour and your career had come to an end, it might be more difficult to take. But for me, it was. For me, it's just reality that I'm very lucky to be where I am at the moment, and I'm very thankful for that. So while it was a great career, I know it's over and it's a time of moving on. But no, I look back with great fondness, looking at those great days.
I said the last 15 months will have taken some getting used to. It's been, I would imagine, a whirlwind for you since you were diagnosed with cancer of the pancreas, where you immediately, of course, had to stop writing and went with your family into an altogether very different battle. How difficult is it for you, or easy for you, to sum up what you and your family and the team behind you have been through over the last 15 or so months?
It's quite easy really to sum it up. I mean, it was obviously very, very unfortunate what happened and devastating for us all at the time, but it's a case of getting on with it then immediately. While I said racing was everything for me prior to getting sick, and my whole life revolved around racing, and our lives revolved around racing, but that quickly changed when something as serious as this happens to you, and it was a case of the illness took over our lives, and that we had to just get stuck in and try and deal with it, and it was all consuming really, because with treatment and then preparing for surgery and getting through it. So I mean, while you might think that it'll be devastating, but your mind is active. You're all the time trying to just get through this and meet the next goal, and so the time actually went reasonably quickly for me, but as I said, until I had the surgery, then things slowed down a little bit. The recovery was quite difficult, but when you're in the middle of it, it's a case of getting on with it, and I suppose that was the same as what I was when I was riding. It just was a case of getting on with it.
Did you have any idea before that initial diagnosis that something was seriously wrong? Were you open to the possibility of your mortality and something being seriously wrong?
Not really, no, to be honest. I knew there was something serious as it went on. From the middle of the previous season, I was getting back pain, and I was full sure it was after pulling a muscle, or I was thinking back, did I get a fall or a wrench it or whatever, and I was getting a lot of physiotherapy, as you would anyway. I would get physiotherapy regularly. And but the pain wasn't going away, and if anything it was getting worse. And I got through the season and went on holiday, and I was hoping that it would disappear with a bit of time and rest. But while I was on holiday, I was getting physiotherapy, getting massages, because the pain was increasing all the time. And I had some blood tests, which I regularly do, and well, nothing was showing. But eventually, then when I came back and was getting prepared for the upcoming season, I just knew that this is not right, and I went to a great Dr. Adrian McGoldrick, who is obviously we all know how great a man he is, and he realised it was something a little bit more serious, and then obviously sent me on for the test. But then when I went and had the tests, I knew straight away that this was something very, very serious.
Do you think being a jockey, and that's a career I think we associate with pretty hard men, be it flat or jumps, what you put yourself through day in, day out, I think we'd associate many with having a higher pain threshold than most. I mean, in some ways, does that mean that you weren't aware of what was going on as soon as you may have been because of what you do, and therefore you kept on thinking, well, look, it can't be that bad, or it's a bit of pain, I'll deal with it, if you like?
Yeah, I suppose you could say a little bit of ignorance. You just sort of, again, I keep going back to and it is the mindset of a jockey is just just keep going and get on with it, and the thoughts of missing a day or being out with injury, you just don't envisage that, and you just don't allow yourself to think that. So yeah, I mean, I was kept pushing on, and but realistically, I probably should have went and got myself checked sooner, and in knowing that it was probably a little bit more serious than a pulled muscle. But I think that's the mentality of riders, is that you just keep going until you have to stop, and I suppose it is a tough game, and you have to be a tough skin to succeed as a rider, and especially at a higher level, which I'd like to think I was at for a number of years of my career. And that when you get up there, the pressures of riding for a big stable and big owners and on big days, you have to be mentally strong. And so that's the way I approached. Thankfully that mindset, I was able to bring that to getting through the illness. Did you decide that pretty much straight away, that you hear of people being diagnosed with such serious things as this, and they say, I knew I was going to get through it? I mean, did you approach it like that straight away mentally? Did you tell yourself, did you believe that this wasn't going to stop you? Very much so, yeah. I just initially the shock is the first emotion you experience. So your mind is all over the place. But then I was very fortunate. I was in a very, very good hospital with excellent staff, and I've been on record that I had a conversation with the head nurse on the ward, and she put my mind in the right place and how to go about this, and then I had a huge support from obviously great family and friends and a lot of people within the industry, and so that was very helpful for me to get through it. But yeah, it's you just I never ever felt that this was going to beat me, and with that said, I always had huge respect for what I had to go through, and it was very, very serious, but I just wasn't ready for it to beat me. I remember reading that you'd be there, you'd be undergoing your treatment, and you'd almost feel surrounded by really sick people here, almost as if you weren't one of those, but of course you were. Yeah. No, I mean, it's I suppose you have to have that mindset, because I genuinely feel that if you start to let it get in on top of you and start to think negative thoughts, I just have a feeling that the illness would thrive on that, and then eventually it'll wear you down. So I always went about it that you just get in, get the treatment was going to work, have the surgery. While it was a very, very big surgery, and it was a very difficult recovery, I never one day did I think, oh, this is getting me. I never did. I never allowed myself to think that way, and thankfully, we've come out the other side, or getting there anyway. So as I said, thankfully that was the mindset that was very, very much needed, I think. You say coming out the other side, so just where are you at the moment? You've obviously you've announced that you are no longer going to ride. You have officially retired. That in some ways, Pat, is because you're healthy, because you are
at a certain weight, and a race riding weight wouldn't be a sensible one for you to get down to. So
No.
in some sense, health-wise, that is entirely good news.
It's extremely good news, and it was at the end of the day, it was a very, very easy decision for me to make. At the beginning, yes, of course, the dream and the fairy tale would be to get back to race riding and hopefully have ridden yesterday. You know what I mean? But
did you believe you could? Was that a
there
realistic goal?
was a thought, yeah. You know, and I said, you know, I could do this, and you know, I could get back to race riding. And
what did the family say?
Look, Francis would always be with everything that I've done over the years. Look, whatever you decide to do, we're here 100% behind you, and that was brilliant. But I think deep down they were hoping that it wouldn't happen, because you know, going back to the lifestyle of all the wasting and sweating and you know trying to get the weight off. You know, I think I'm a lot happier person now than I was when I was for the last 25 years. So I don't think both my children and Francis didn't want me to go back to that person. But no, as I said, but realistically, if I was to sit down and at the back of my mind, I was thinking, you know, it probably isn't the wisest thing in the world to go back. And one day it hit me. I was just after the surgery, you know, the surgeon came in with his team, and they were really happy with how things went. I was just saying to myself, how could you go back to abusing your body to get down to a weight to ride horses after all the good work that they had done to make me better? And that day I made a decision that I wasn't going to ride again.
How different a person is Pat Smullen now to the man that rode Harzan to both those Derby victories?
I think a lot different. I think a lot more content, a lot happier with life. And as I said, you know, the simple things in life make me happy now, where before, you know, while you were riding, and I think most riders would admit this, but maybe some wouldn't. But you know, you've never enough. You know, even if you won the Derby, it's all about the next day, and you know, and delivering and riding winners, and you put a lot of. There was no pressure being put on me from Dermot or the owners. Of course, they wanted results, and there was. But you put self-pressure, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to achieve, and I always felt that, you know, I'd never rode enough Group 1 winners, I never rode enough winners, and, you know, I was, you know, 9 times champion jockey. All I ever wanted to do was to be 10 times champion jockey, to get it into double figures. That's the mindset that you had, you know what I mean? So, but I think you have to have that little bit of madness in you, maybe that's the word, to keep pushing you forward, to keep achieving, and But as I said, now I'm very, very content with life. So, watching the Derby yesterday, for example, you yourself were stood there a few years ago lifting that trophy, but you have such a different perspective now. That can you enjoy racing, but also see it as it's just the Derby? Yeah.
You had a very different perspective a few years ago.
Very much so, you know, because you desperately wanted to win it, and but now, you know, I must admit I enjoy watching racing. I get great enjoyment out of watching racing, and you know, and as I said, probably this is probably a good thing for me. Maybe I would never have dealt with retirement as well as I am if it just came to an end. At least now, you know, I you know, as I said, it puts a whole new perspective on life, and you know, I just have a feeling that when it came to an end as a rider, for whatever reason, let it be, as I said, that, you know, you were just gone your sell-by date, or, you know, you were gone out of favour or whatever, I think I mightn't have dealt with retirement as well as I am now. So you have to look for the silver lining to everything.
Smiling and positive over something that was entirely life-changing for you and your family, but a battle that, from the outset, really, I think you, Francis, and everyone dealt with head-on and with great openness as well. Was it a decision between all of you to say, look, let's get information out there, let's see if our battle can help others as well, and the only way to do that is through openness and through information? Because from the outset, that seems to be the way you approached it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think first the initial thought of our mind was, obviously, you're thinking of yourself. I wasn't thinking of other people at that time. But you know, I've got 3 young kids at home, and you know, I was speaking to Dermot, and obviously he has a big operation, and his owners were asking as to what's the situation, or what, you know. So you know, I didn't want to be at home trying to keep it a secret, and then obviously you'd be on the phone and you'd slip and say something, and the kids would hear, and then they'd be worrying as to. So we just got it out there, and as I said, there's no shame to it. It's unfortunate that this is something that comes to a lot of people in stores, and it's unfortunately it's quite common now, you know. But as I said, I got it out there, got it, you know, and as I said, put a bit of you know, openness to what was going on, and I think that was fair on everybody, let it be employers or family, everyone, and it was easier to deal with then rather than trying to hide something, in my opinion.
Akin to the mental health discussion we've had on this show about half an hour or so ago, that actually being able to talk about things like this for all the very different illnesses, it can only be a good thing. But it's that initial step to make, being able to talk openly about it.
I found it very, very helpful to speak about it, to be honest. You know, I didn't want to, if anyone came into the house to visit me in the early stages, friends and you know, I'd bring it up and get it out there, because, you know, people were a little bit afraid as to whether should we mention it, or, you know, and so I felt it very, very helpful for me to be open and talk about it. As I said, I think bottling something like that up is not good, and as you say, going back to the mental health situation as what we, you know, is obviously a big problem as well. I think being open is everything, and you know, as I said, I found it very, very helpful to speak about it.
I think it's an interesting point you hit upon as well. People who no matter how well they know you, come to see you when you're going through that, perhaps almost don't know how to approach it and what to say. Would perhaps it's personal perspective, would you always prefer them to come and approach it head on and just say what they felt about it, if you like, rather than treading on eggshells?
Yeah,
around?
very much so. I didn't want people treading on eggshells, you know. But you know, you're putting everyone's uncomfortable then, you know what I mean. So no, I was very, you know, as I said, if they didn't bring it up, I brought it up immediately and got it out there, because obviously that's the reason why they were there, is to speak about it and to see how you're getting on or whatever. So no, I thought that was the way to approach it. But you know, as I said, I never wanted anyone coming to me going through it with a negative approach to it. I thought that, you know, I didn't want to speak to anyone that, you know, had that negative thought or it was going to end badly, or I was all about positivity and having positive people around me, and that was a big key thing for me.
How much of a difference, genuinely, to your treatment and the progress that you've made and the recovery, do you think that positivity made?
I think it was everything. Yeah, obviously I had the huge help from a great medical team, don't get me wrong, and I mean that had to go right, and they got everything right, and the surgery went well, and but you know, I think you have to have a very, very positive approach to it, because I genuinely feel that if you brought that negative feeling or negative thoughts, allow them into your mind, I genuinely think the disease would feed on it, and it'd overcome you. So you know, that's something I feel very strongly about.
How surprised were you with the huge outpouring from the racing world and the wider world, or was there part of you that as the success you had, a 9 times Irish champion flat jockey, you half expected, well, this is going to affect people, or were you genuinely surprised?
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised. I never expected anything from anybody, or never did in my life. It was always a case of, you know, but getting on and making your own, you know, that's what I always felt. But I couldn't believe the outpour of goodwill from the top of big racing organisations that got in touch, and if I needed anything, that they were there to help, all the way down to everybody. But I think that just shows, you know, while our industry does have problems, and, you know, we as you discussed about funding and all sorts, but this is a brilliant industry with brilliant people in it, and when you are in trouble, they come together and rally around you, and I found that firsthand, and I was nothing short of, as was Francis and Orla, overwhelmed by the support that was there if needed. But all I needed was the good medical people that were taking care of me, and I had that, and the rest you have to get on with yourself. And no one can do anything for you other than you know, be there and supportive, and I had that tenfold.
And I think part of that outpouring and appreciation for what you were going through was part of the gift that you gave through your career to people in the brilliant winners that you rode and the success you had. And I'm sure people in turn wanting to thank you for that. When you announced your official retirement from the saddle, is there one moment that you wouldn't trade in from your brilliant career that you look back and say, that one stays. If I had to give any, that would not be it.
Look, it's just to state the obvious. Obviously, you know, winning the Derby was you know, it's you know, the old saying that the childhood dream, but it actually is, because when you set out as an apprentice, you watched the Derby, and while winning your own Derby at the Curragh was very, very special, and to do it twice. But to win the Epsom Derby is the defining moment of a rider, in my opinion, and it came at the really right time in my life, in that I was desperately wanted to win it, and I appreciated every minute of it, and more importantly, the 3 kids were old enough to remember it and appreciate it. So that was an amazing day.
And doing it for that man, it made it all the more special.
And to give him his first Derby as well, which was very, very special. And obviously His Highness had experienced the thrill of winning that race a few times before that. But for myself and Dermot, it was a very, very special day. And a day, as I said, both of us will always remember. Even last night he was saying to me, reminiscing about it and how great a day it was. So I was very, very fortunate to win the world's greatest race, in my opinion.
And I think it's one of my favourite celebrations to see, because it has everything. It has the joy, the fist pump, and it has that little moment of hand on head. Almost disbelief from a man that's ridden the success that you've already had in classics between Britain and Ireland, but there is still that disbelief, even later on in your career, that you have ridden the Derby winner.
I never experienced the feeling of winning another race that I have experienced winning that race when I went by the line. I literally couldn't believe that we're after winning the Epsom Derby, and that's what it means to a rider. You know, it was just, and I think it's important that a rider shows the emotion, like, because whether you're ice cold or like Frankie, you know, I think it's important that you show to the general public and to the people that you're working for, and everybody that's involved with the horse, like, how much enjoyment you got and how important that race is.
And now that it's after the event, you can tell us all about the events leading up to it, Pat, and how close this horse was not to running, because genuinely there was a chance this horse wasn't even going to line up.
I was sitting in the weigh room. I'd no right before the race, and I was in my suit, and Chris Maud is my valet, and I didn't even change. I said, this horse not going to run, you know, and so we were sitting waiting, and I was actually looked at getting an earlier flight back. I said, I'm not going to stay here and watch the Derby while I'm not taking part. I was heading for home, and but then thankfully I got a call in the weigh room from the boss to say that it's going ahead. You know, the horse is fine, and they got the shoe back on and everything going ahead. And so Chris Maud actually said to me, "You'll win the Derby." He said, this is the story of this, and it went over my head, but I remember it now. But got changed, weighed out, and then in the paddock, the boss said, well, His Highness was there. You know, it's your call now. If you feel at the start that he's not right, take him out. And they had spoken to the stewards and this vet, everybody. So
had you canted down and he not felt right, that you would have pulled the plug and quite happily said, look, we're not going to run.
Definitely.
But the whole way on the way down, are you looking for something? Are you thinking, does he feel right? Is there anything wrong here?
2 strides into his canter and you were running. he floated to the start. He was absolutely on the springs, and but that's what he was, and is an extremely well balanced horse. And obviously winning the race is obviously the best ride you ever got around there, but he literally was the best ride I've ever had around Epsom, in that, you know, I'd never felt the undulations. He came down Tattenham Corner extremely well, but that's the difference of being a very good, well balanced horse and not being.
We saw in the intro to you, we saw Refuse to Bend, which came a little bit earlier, of course, in your career. How different a feeling, and I know you've talked about the difference between the races as well, but how different a feeling given where you were in your career between the 2 of those victories? I think at the age I was winning the Derby, I think you have more appreciation of what actually is after happening. I was younger, obviously, when Refuse to Bend won, but obviously I knew the enormity of it too, because you were making a potential stallion as well, and it was for our main owners in Moyglaire Stud, who have been extremely supportive of me, Mr. Hafner, who owned it, Refused to Bend and the farm, and then inherited by his daughter Eva now, and
and they have been hugely supportive people to me all through my career, and especially Eva in the last 15 months has been a huge supporter of mine, and great, just a great person, and has helped us as a family so much, and I'll never be able to repay the Hafner family for the leg up they've given me in my career.
And that's just talking to you now, it seems that what's happened recently has perhaps almost allowed you to piece everything together, and going way back to that Newmarket success, for example, but talking about people who were around you there, still around you in that very different capacity when you're fighting your health battle, and perhaps allows you to reflect and thank them in a very different way.
Yeah, all the owners from Dermot's Yard, they were very, very supportive, kept in contact with me, and again offered any support that they possibly could. But equally, Tom, I think people that owned at one horse that I won on got in contact, and it could have been a number of years ago, but that gives me great satisfaction that I'd like to think that I conducted myself well throughout my career, treated people with respect, whether it was the person that owned a huge breeding operation and had hundreds of horses in training, to a syndicate member that had a leg in a horse, and I think that was very, very important, and I'd like to think that I treated everybody the same and with respect, and I think that came back to me in my time of need when we were going through a tough time with the illness, that a lot of people got in contact, and I think that was because, as I said, I like to think I conducted myself well throughout my career.
When was the first time you've got back on a horse now? Yeah. When was the first time you got back on?
About 2 weeks ago. So back and riding out at Dermot's Yard, and that has given me great satisfaction, because not alone just physically to do it and be able to feel that you're able to do it again, but just the fun of being in a yard and riding out with the lads, and I've always felt that I've had a very, very good relationship with the staff, and I have had, but it's just good fun to be back in there amongst them again, but now I'm only a number. I no longer have a purpose. I'm just riding out.
I would suggest that your opinion may be valued over others, given what you've done in your career and the horses you sat on before. But was there any emotion different to normal when you did get back on that first horse, that sense of achievement wasn't lost on you, that for all you weren't back race riding, you were back sitting on a horse, which is what you've done all your life?
Yeah, personally it gave me great satisfaction, because through those tough weeks that we were in hospital after the surgery, I mean, when you're struggling to get out, couldn't even get out of the bed to go to the bathroom, or I remember one day my nose was itchy, and I physically hadn't got the strength to lift my hand up to scratch my nose, and to think that was late October to the middle of May, getting back on a horse and riding out, I think that gave me great satisfaction that we'd come a long way in a short time. So I suppose, like everything else, Tom, apply a little bit of ignorance and just keep pushing forward, and I think a little bit of ignorance helped me get through a lot of tough times.
And you did actually say quite openly, you weren't that worried about researching this or anything to do it. You were just looking forward. You didn't need to know the ins and outs of what was going on. It was, I'm going to overcome it, and that's what's going to happen.
Exactly. But again, that was down to the advice of that nurse, Dee.
It was Dee, wasn't it?
Dee, in Vincent's. She told me not to research, don't read up on it. We're a lot, when you go to Dr. Google, and she says we're a lot further on than what that will tell you, and she was right. And personally, that'll be my advice to anyone in the same situation, is, the professionals know what they're doing. You just do what you're told, and you don't need to be filling your mind with all this other information that could be God, which might not be accurate.
And what is your now approach to post-recovery and the future?
Just getting on with it, to be totally honest, Tom. I have to go back on Wednesday, for checkups regularly every 2 weeks for the first while, just to make sure that everything's going the right way. And I'm sure they'll push it out a little bit, I think, to monthly, and then hopefully that'll go further on. So it's pretty much a case of getting on and living your life now. And as I said, it's something I have to live with, that because there is a high percentage of return with what I have and I've had, but you can't let that rule your life. I have to just get on, and I live every day as it comes, and I'm very positive about the future, and just keep pushing on and getting on with it, and that's the way I'm going to approach it. And because again, I think if you start thinking, if it came back, or you can't live your life like that. So we just have to keep going and hope to God that it doesn't.
And in as you've said now, you feel a happier man. You've all those past glories that we've looked back upon, and yet your life satisfaction is higher now than it was back then.
Very much so, yeah, no question. It's as I said, I'm very, very happy with where I am, and it's great to be back doing a little bit of work, and as I said, I'm very the little things in life make me happy now, as opposed to wanting to win derbies.
Absolutely. Pat Smullen, thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. Pat's going to stick around, and we'll get Sarah Lynham and Jim McGrath back in to close the show. See you soon.